Hey. Okay, hold on one sec.
Your video kind of choppy.
I don't think so.
Do I sound fine? Mine seems a little choppy, but if it's fine on your end, then it should be fine.
Sound fine to me.
Good.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Players Club. I'm your host, Levi the Heartbreak Kid Valentine, at Levi_Valentine on Twitter. Joining me is my good friend, Trevin Chucky Cremosta, whose tweets are too hot for your eyes. I am back from the dead, as you heard on last week's episode, and I brought a special friend with me who did not appreciate your slander last week, Trevin.
We're like an AM radio show now with different. Is that Skipper? I don't remember what his name was. Snowball?
Flipper. And I do not appreciate the disrespect for my friend. Disrespected him last week. You're disrespecting him again this week. And you better not go in near any oceans because he and his friends are going to get you.
I haven't seen you smile this big. You must give Flipper a real nice kiss.
Flipper's my best friend.
It's platonic.
You've been replaced. That's all there is to it.
It's fair.
So I am back from the dead, but Brent is on vacation this week, and he made international news, Trevin.
Yes, he did. We sent him on a little work trip, and he did good, I think.
You want to explain to the people what happened to poor Brent?
Yeah, we said go to France. We're trying to grow our international listenership to this show. Try to get yourself on TV at the Tour de France and just get our name out there a little bit. And by God, he did it because he stood there at line ready for the bikes to go by with his Fantasy Players Club sign, looking all happy and proud of himself, and basically took out the entire field. And so he definitely got on the news a lot, and we're happy about that.
Well done, Brent, as always.
That video is amazing. I can't believe that. It was. We'll just keep saying it was Brent. I can't believe he didn't hear the bikes coming behind him. Like, I don't know if he didn't realize that he was over the line or how it even happened, but boy, he made a mess.
Yeah, I think that was his problem. Not a lot of spatial awareness there from Brent. So, have they located Brent yet? Have you heard?
No, Brent got right out of the country. We're still trying to track him down, but he's out of there.
Well, when we get Brent back next week, from an undisclosed location, we'll have to ask him about it.
Yep, check out the Fantasy Players Club Twitter account, and you can see pictures of Brent there.
Yep. You've probably already seen them all over the news, but they're also available on our Twitter feed. We also have on our Twitter feed a shot that I had to retweet, despite you two being the self-proclaimed golf fanatics, of a little Bryson DeChambeau shot from the U.S. Open, where Clubby, a member of the Fantasy Players Club, was enjoying the golf tournament, and Bryson's ball landed right next to their box of Stella. Got a great pub for Stella, who still refuses to sponsor our show and get even more publicity than they would have got from the shot, I'm sure. So, what was the reason that you didn't tweet that out there, Trevin? You not thinking right?
I didn't proclaim to be a fan or a golfing expert like Brent does. I do enjoy golf. I enjoy watching it, but it's not something that I can have on every weekend. I watch most of majors, but so I missed that one. Sorry.
Really disappointing all of us clubbies who really respected that fan for, again, trying to get us some publicity. They didn't have the sign like Brent, but they did represent the Stella there.
Yep, it's good to see the clubbies out there.
As always. So let's hop into our main event. Well, and for tonight's main event, we have 2 rounds. First, we're talking a little Dynasty Strategery, and second of all, we are talking about Brent's punishment. So let's start with Dynasty Strategery, Brent, or Trevin. You came up with this idea,
Easy.
so I'll let you tee it up.
Easy.
You guys are all the same in my book now. It's just me and Flipper over here.
I've never been more offended in my life. No, so I had a question. Where this is my first off season of being in a Dynasty. Oh, Jesus. This is my first off season of being in a Dynasty league. So I'm thinking about strategy a lot. Right now is a time where I think most leagues are probably
enough, Flipper, enough.
Flipper is making a lot of noise.
Flipper won't stop playing. All right. I think we got Flipper shut off here. I gave him a treat. He's happy. Sorry.
Creepers, you got one mouthy dolphin. Did you get him kenneled up, or what'd you do?
I gave him a treat. He's eating. We're good for a little while.
We got some time. So, this is my first offseason of being in a Dynasty League, so I'm thinking about strategy a lot. And I think most teams or most leagues are going to be doing their rookie draft soon. So I'm thinking about the guys at the top end and the bottom end. If you're a team that just won last year, I'm kind of thinking you really should be looking to trade your picks and really mortgaging your future, because if you won, you've got a solid squad. I think you would be looking at extending your championship for 2 or 3 years is about, in my mind, and you can chime in, tell me if I'm wrong at any time here if you think different about this, but all your players on your roster are going to be aging. I wouldn't be waiting for a 12th pick, rookie pick, to come in and actually help me win the next couple of years. I want to try to maybe rattle off 2 or 3 championships in a row. So if I was one of those teams that just won coming in the offseason here right before the draft, I'd be looking to see what I can get for trading next year's first-round pick, or this year's first-round pick and next year's. Presumably, it's probably going to be at the end of that draft if you have a good team, and maybe even your second picks in each draft too, and seeing what I can get for that, at least throwing some fishing line out there and seeing what's available. I'm trying to target some players that I know are going to be good for the next 2 or 3 years, and they're going to help me win right away. What do you think about that strategy, Levi?
I think that makes some sense in certain situations. I think you have to be careful because you're assuming, Trevin, that your 12th pick is never going to be a player that really helps you out. And I think that
I wouldn't. It's a risk for sure. I just don't. The likelihood of the 12th pick helping you these first 2 years when your window's still open, it would worry me that I'm not maximizing my chance to win here.
Yeah, and so I think that can be true, but I think it also depends a lot on the class and the depth of the class, as well as the player that you're looking at potentially getting at that 12th pick. So, first of all, assuming you're going to have the 12th pick is a little bold, but when you're looking at
for this first year, I'm saying you just won, so you do have the 12th pick. Next year is where you might hurt yourself by trading that one away.
Okay, so even if it's this year, like if you look back at 2020 in a Superflex league, and I pulled it up for DLF's May 2020 ADP for Superflex rookie drafts, the number 11 pick was Justin Jefferson. So there could be some high-end players available late in the first round, even if you are picking at that 12 spot. You can have someone who does make a real difference. Obviously, there's not a Justin Jefferson sitting there at 12 in every class, but there are some good players available late in the first round. So just, I guess, keep that in the back of your mind and don't be making trades for older players and trading away these rookie picks without seriously considering the potential implications there. Because I think, injuries and things happen, and sometimes these players are a lot better than we think they're going to be if you're getting them at 12. Number 10 was Justin Herbert last year. So, I mean, there were probably some drafts where Herbert was available at 12, and Jefferson was probably available at 12 pretty regularly. So, I guess that's, before we dive into some of these specific players, Trevor, that's the only thing I would throw out there is just a little bit of a caution is when you're trading away these current and future first-round picks, even if you think they're going to be late or if they are late, you are taking a risk that you're passing on an elite rookie player for, a veteran that maybe has less time, that he'll be a viable asset for your roster.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So, Trevin, you came up with a list of players that you want to go through to see if we should be targeting those right now or not.
Yeah. So I tried to kind of put a list of guys that I think you'd probably be able to get. It's not all in a vacuum. It depends on who has these players, and every trade, it's easy to say and sometimes harder to actually complete. But these are some guys where if they're on a team that is going to struggle next year, probably might be available. So first one is Zeke. We should start with quarterbacks first. Sorry. So first one I got here, Tom Brady, who's sitting at 43 years old. So you can't I mean, Tom seems to be ageless. I don't know if he's going to play till 50 or what he's going to do. But if he's on a team that is looking like they might struggle next year, and you need that second quarterback in a super flex, would you? I would think trading your 12th pick for Tom Brady really wouldn't be a bad idea. If you're at the 12th pick in this draft, you're looking at Tom Brady, who you should help you probably put up similar numbers as he did last year, and you think he's going to hit the age cliff at some point, but you think he'd be good for at least 1 or 2 years here. Or you're looking at Mac Jones, who is probably going to be a year or two away from actually contributing to your team. What do you think about that scenario?
112 feels like a lot for Tom Brady, but I don't know if it's that far out of line. Honestly, like, I would probably either try to get him for a little cheaper or hold off and try to make that deal in season potentially. What about you?
I mean, I'd only do it if my second quarterback spot is really bad. I don't know how I would have won last year if it's that bad. Maybe I had Ben last year and I just don't want to ride Ben again. And so you're kind of limited to either taking Mac or trading Tom Brady if you're looking at those are your options. I think I'd trade it. I think that's going to be a solid your second quarterback for the next 2 years. Giving up the 112. What's that?
For Brady, you would trade the 112.
I would. If I'm in a situation where I'm looking at this is either I can take Mac Jones or take Tom Brady, I have a championship team, I think I'd take Tom Brady.
I think if you won the championship last year, you probably have a good second quarterback already in the Superflex League. So I would be inclined to stick with those and maybe try to draft either a position player or trade for someone else, potentially at that 12 if you don't like Mac Jones. But either way, let's move to your next one.
You want to go to running backs now? I don't really have another quarterback that fit my scenario here.
We kicked around Roethlisberger, but I don't think anybody's trading anything of value for him.
Yeah, and
Matt Ryan, maybe a decent one.
That's not a bad idea either. But just for Big Ben too, in my head, that's like you said with your Tom of that might be an end season one. Your second quarterback is really barren, and maybe Big Ben's doing decent that you can get him there. Matt Ryan, how old is Matt Ryan?
36.
Doesn't play a day under 41 in my eyes.
I think he's one I might consider it for if I really need that second quarterback, because I think you're getting a couple of years of good production still, whether it's in Atlanta or elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one's kind of an easy call. He should have another 36. Man, that's a little old. It's 3 or 4 years left with him, even if you kind of give up a little bit for him.
And that's where I struggle with some of these that we're going to get to is I think it's just projecting your team out that far for next season is kind of risky. And I would almost be more inclined to make sure that my season is going the way I would hope it's going to at the start, the first 5-6 weeks, and then make a lot of these moves and try to go all in when things are going well and I have a little less risk on my end as far as where that pick is going to be and what value I'm getting in return for these players and lessening the injury risk on the players you're trading for as well. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit with this question in general, Trevin, not necessarily specific to any of these players.
In my mind, though, your draft picks, and we've talked about this a little bit before too, they're not ever going to be worth as much as they are right now, right before the rookie draft happens.
Sure.
So you can get a little more because the people can see the specific player they can get with your pick and they know the position you're in. And that's where you can get a little more maybe than instead of waiting on the season, a first round pick isn't worth as much as quite right before the rookie drafts happen.
Yeah, if you're going to buy veterans, it's a good time to do it. Because, like you said, the rookie picks are at their peak value and the veterans are at their lowest value, especially some of these guys you're talking about that are maybe nearing on the downhill side of their career.
Yeah. And if that's where these guys might get tough to get to, like you said, the veterans are going to be worth more if Tom Brady does come out firing, Matt Ryan does come out firing, it's going to be a lot harder to get them to.
And I know that's one of your questions on what rebuilding teams should be doing right now, Trevin. I think honestly, rebuilding teams with these players on their roster, these veteran players, should wait until either right at the beginning of the season or into the season early in the season to try to trade them away, because I think, off season, rookies and young players get a value spike. In season, veterans get that value spike. So that's to kind of jump ahead of you a little bit on this list. That's kind of how I would be approaching this right now if I'm a rebuilding team. Like, I'm not selling unless I get a really good deal on some of these veteran players.
But you're kind of contradicting yourself, no? You're saying you wouldn't trade being the guy with the picks, but you're also saying you wouldn't trade now being the veteran players. So you're just in the position of you're not trading no matter what.
On some of these players. So like a Matt Ryan, a Tom Brady, I would probably wait till in season. Some of these other ones where I think they have a little more value, I may be more inclined to try to pull the trigger now if you can. And I think, if you're one of those contending teams, you're probably trying to do it now so you can get that little bit of a discount we're talking about.
Okay, so going forward with running backs to maybe be looking at, Zeke Elliott, who's 25 years old, had the injury troubles last year. This would be one, of course, he's still highly rated in any dynasty ranking you're looking at. So I'll give this trade at you, Levi. You're 112, you just won the championship. You're 112 this year, your first round pick next year, you're 212 this year, and your second round next year.
You're making this way too complicated.
No, your first and second this year and your first and second next year.
Okay.
Because I think that's the kind of haul that you would take to get Zeke. He's still a top end running back right now. So you're just one, but you need that top end guy to really solidify your team.
Yeah, I'd probably do that. So just giving a little more context, Zeke is currently going number 40 overall as running back 16. So if that's the type of value that you can get him at when you're paying in a trade, I think that's a no-brainer. I think Zeke has league-winning upside in the Dallas offense this year. It was a little bit of a down year for him last year, but it's not as bad as you think it was. And I think he has the potential with Dak back this year to be just as good as he was 2 years ago and 3 years ago. And Zeke last year, running back 9 on the year in only 15 games. So if you include week 17, if you go down to week 16, Zeke was right there at running back 10. So even missing a game, he was still a top 10 running back in what we consider a down year. And you're paying, like I said, running back 16 prices. Yeah, I would definitely pull the trigger on Zeke without much hesitation at this point if I could get a deal I liked.
For your second this year, second next year, you think that'd be a good deal for him if it was available for that price?
Probably.
I agree. I think this is the kind of deal I'd be looking for if I was in that position.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one for me.
And just for reference, I'm not saying this is like gospel. I'm just kind of looking at the Dynasty trade calculator as a reference point for trying to make some even numbered trades here. I'm not saying this is exactly. I wouldn't be screenshotting these and sending them to people being like, "What the hell? It's even on here." Just for context here.
Just for me, that's what you do.
Yeah, yeah. What the hell, Levi? I'm winning this. You're winning this trade. Why don't you accept it? All right. Next running back here, Aaron Jones, who's 26. He's in a little bit different situation where we don't know what's going to happen with Rodgers. So I'll give you this option, Levi. Your first round pick this year and first round pick next year. Would you trade that for Aaron Jones?
So
he did finish last year running back 5 in a PPR league.
Yeah, I love it if he stays in Green Bay, obviously, and Aaron Rodgers comes back. I would definitely do that, but right now it's just such a question mark that makes this one not as easy for me as the last one with Zeke. So I think this one I would probably do it, but I'd have to think on it a little more. What about you?
Oh man, he's been good for a couple of years now, and I don't know why his name just doesn't quite ring out like it does for Zeke for me. I think I would do it. This is also kind of the trade I'd be looking for here. It's tough. There's a lot of question marks. I wouldn't be as excited as I would for Zeke, but if Rodgers is there and he's staying in Green Bay the next 2 years, you win that trade.
It's just such a big if at this point. We got the additional details on Rodgers potentially not having to pay out all of that money if he decides. I don't remember when the deadline is, Trevin. Do you happen to know that?
I don't. You sent that to me. There's a deadline coming up. I don't remember exactly what day that was.
Yeah, so that makes it a little more intriguing, I guess, as we kind of see how things turn out in Green Bay. And I love Aaron Jones' talent. I think he's incredibly talented, and I think he'll have a really good year. It's just, is he going to be the one that pushes you over the top to be able to repeat? I don't know. But when you're competitive, I think I lean more towards going ahead and pulling the trigger and trying to win the championship, and so that's probably pushing me a little more towards Jones in this situation.
Yeah, you're just not going to get there's always you can, but I don't think there's a lot of options for bell cow running backs like Aaron Jones provides at the end of the draft this year that would be the same as having him on your team.
And the other thing I think is important as we kind of talk about this is if a bad or a rebuilding team is shopping these players, sometimes the best offense is a good defense in fantasy. So, if you're keeping this player away from one of your competitors and adding them to your roster, that's almost a win-win there, because if that team's set on trading him, somebody's going to get him, and it's probably going to be you or one of the other contending teams. So if you're kind of on the fence or if it's a close deal, I would always have that in the back of my mind as well.
So that Aaron Rodgers, the Pro Football Talk tweeted out that it is this Friday. There's a silver bullet. I don't know the details of why it is, but if he decides by this coming Friday to not play, he would avoid the $2 million in forfeiture and fines. So sounds like this Friday is a deadline date coming up here.
Big week. Hopefully we get some news and some clarity one way or the other.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next one. Austin Eckler, who's also 26, had some injury problems last year. He was out a lot of the year, but when he was in, he was cooking. So let's say the same deal for him for that we said for Aaron Jones. The next 2 years, or this year and next year's first round pick, would you give that up to get Eckler on your team?
Probably. I feel pretty similarly about him and Jones, except I think the risk is more on, the reliability side with Eckler as opposed to the quarterback side. But I think he has a really good situation there with Herbert, and I think he would definitely be a solid piece to add to a competing dynasty roster.
Yep, I'm with you.
But if you're Trevin, if you're putting together your shopping list as a contender and you're going out to buy any of these, I think I'm going to just the order you had them, which was Zeke, Jones, and then Eckler.
Yep. Right now, I would probably put Eckler in front of Jones. The question marks around Rodgers scares me a little bit for Jones. If you can wait to see what's going to happen with Rodgers, then I would definitely have Jones ahead of him.
Yeah, I think that's close between those two.
All right. Did you have any other running backs in mind that I didn't have on the list here?
I don't think so.
Okay. We'll go into receivers. Allen Robinson, currently 27, has had some injury history in the past, tore his ACL, and he's coming in with maybe a rookie quarterback this year. We'll see who wins out the competition. But would you give up your this year's first and next year's first for Allen Robinson?
Yeah, I think I would. I love Allen Robinson, and I'm really excited to see him with Justin Fields this year, actually having a competent quarterback. He's already put up really good numbers, and I think that the ceiling just got raised for him exponentially with Fields there. You?
I'd like Fields, but there's not a lot of history of a wide receiver one from a rookie quarterback. It just hasn't happened a whole lot. So I wish I could trust that this year he would be that top end guy having a rookie quarterback, but I don't know if you can trust that. So if I'm trading for him, I need it to be a guy that's going to pop right away, and that scares me a little bit on him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I
love him. I love his talent. I just don't, with the rookie quarterback, it scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
If I'm making this trade where I'm giving up my next 2 first rounds, I need it to be a guy I can count on right away.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back through the last couple drafts and who the rookie quarterbacks were. So last year you had Burrow and T. Higgins, and that worked out pretty well for T. Higgins, both rookies. And then who else?
It was Herbert and Keenan Allen. He made Keenan Allen was a wide receiver 1 last year, I believe. But I think that was very few of a whole season of a rookie quarterback had a wide receiver that was in the top 12 of receivers.
Yeah. If he had a Keenan Allen type season, would you be disappointed?
No, absolutely not. I'm just saying that's a little rare that happened.
Yeah.
Nothing against Fields. I like Fields, but I would worry about. I would do this trade, but it would worry me a little bit to have a rookie quarterback to depend on.
Sure, that's fair. We just did come up with a couple examples, so I had to give you a hard time. T. Higgins was wide receiver 24 last year, and Keenan Allen was wide receiver 9, to give a little context. So, and T. Higgins was a rookie as well. So I think Allen Robinson could easily have a season like Keenan Allen did last year. And like just looking at the numbers, Allen Robinson was wide receiver 7 last year with the dog crap they put on the field there in Chicago
for his whole career.
Yeah. So yeah, give me Allen Robinson all day.
All right. So we were just talking about him, but now how about Keenan Allen? Same thing. Your next 2 first rounds. He is 29.
Yeah, so a couple of years older than Allen Robinson. I'm kind of Duchesne's has been talking a lot about Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler and their upside here and how they're probably not getting the respect they deserve with Herbert in this offense. And if we all love Herbert, don't we kind of have to love his weapons a little bit? And I tend to agree with him. So I would probably do a similar deal. I'd probably hopefully try to get a little bit of a discount compared to what I'm paying for Allen Robinson just based on the couple of years older. But I think that their upside is very similar.
I agree. They're pretty similar in my head too. So I would go ahead and do that deal. I'd feel actually a little bit better about Keenan Allen just because we've seen it work with him and Herbert.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, next on the wide receiver list, we got Michael Thomas, who came off a weird year last year. He's 28 years old, and we're not sure who his quarterback's going to be yet. So same type of trade for him. You're this year's first, next year's first. You trade that for Michael Thomas to be try to keep your championship window open.
Probably, but this is kind of reminds me of the Aaron Jones one where it's kind of there's some quarterback questions, right? Like who's going to be the quarterback in New Orleans? And as you and Brent discussed last week, with Taysom Hill at quarterback, Michael Thomas did pretty well. And I think that, if it's Jameis, he's certainly shown the ability to make receivers fantasy viable in the past too. So maybe I'm more worried about quarterback than I should be, but I have a little bit more reservation about just this offense going forward with some of those questions and Michael Thomas's ability to continue to perform at the level he has a couple of years ago.
I think this would be the first on my wide receiver list of a guy that I would wait till the season to trade. Hopefully whoever owns him in fantasy is having a crap year and maybe I can get him then. I'm not super comfortable with either of these QBs, but not knowing which QB it is. I don't want to trade a lot of my future for him right now.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Next, Julio Jones, 32 years old, had a little injury problem last year and just got traded to the Titans to probably be 1A, 1B there with A.J. Brown. Titans aren't throwing the ball a whole lot, but it's definitely made A.J. Brown a good fantasy receiver there. So I'll give it to you, Levi, for this year's 112 and the next 2 years of second-round picks for Julio Jones.
I think I'm just like with Michael Thomas, like we just talked about, and some of the questions surrounding him. I think there's enough here with Julio between his age, his ability to stay on the field, and his new quarterback, a new team situation that it's probably one where I'm waiting until in season to make a move here. And that's just how I'm approaching this one. What about you?
What about just this year's 112?
It's just so hard because you look at who's going around 112 in Superflex. I mean, you have Mac Jones, but then you also have Jalen Waddle, 11, Devontae Smith at 10, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore. Julio, I think, has far more upside for a single year. But do I want to give up that potential to have, a longer term asset for that marginal upside this year? It's just a lot harder for me on this one. So, yeah, I think I would wait till in season.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. Next, Robert Woods, 29 years old, has a new quarterback there at the Rams. Let's see. How about just 112 and your second round pick this year?
So Robert Woods, currently going as wide receiver 26, finished last year really well. He finished as wide receiver 12 last year. I'm really pretty optimistic about this offense with Matt Stafford playing quarterback instead of Jared Goff, but Robert Woods did benefit from a little higher TD rate than four receivers last year. I think it was over 8%, maybe, if I remember right. And I think there could be a little bit of regression there where maybe, if Cooper Kupp gets the touchdowns this year, Robert Woods didn't finish with that many yards, if memory serves me correct. Let me pull it up here real quick. But so that's what makes me a little nervous about him and makes me lean a little more towards potentially the in-season buy. He finished with 935 yards, ended up with 8 touchdowns, 7% rate. I was a little off on that. So number 13 among receivers. So I think that kind of buoyed him a little bit. I like Robert Woods a lot, but I like him more as counting on him to be a wide receiver 2. And I think that, giving up those picks, I can probably either find somebody who's going to fill in or make that trade in season if I need to.
I think this is one I would probably take. His game isn't really built on speed, I think. So being 29 doesn't scare me a whole lot. As far as my next 2 years of championship window, I think I'd give up my 112 and 212 here to get Robert Woods on my team.
Yeah, that's one that's really close for me.
What do you think about his nickname, Bobby Trees?
Top tier nickname.
Yeah, I love it. All right, moving on to DeAndre Hopkins, who is 29 years old, had the big year last year, first year at the Cardinals. Would you give up, let's see, this year's first and next year's first?
Yes.
Would you include your seconds in both years?
So 212 plus whatever my second is next year.
Yep.
Probably. I mean, he's just so consistent, Drevin. He finished wide receiver 4 last year. He's got a ton of upside to repeat that this year, I think, in that Arizona offense. You look at the year before, he was 2019, he was a wide receiver 3. I mean, the year 2018, wide receiver 4. So you're pretty much getting a locked-in top 4 receiver for this year. And I think that's the type of player that helps you win a league. And so giving up those couple of firsts, pretty easy for me for that type of consistent performance and availability. I mean,
yeah,
he's only 29. He's not, I think he's got at least a couple more years of being, probably a high-end wide receiver 1. So that one, I think Nuke's one of those difference makers that you just, if you can get him for a reasonable price as a contender, you have to go for it.
Yeah, I don't think you can depend on getting anything near him for your end of the first round picks. So I think it's pretty easily taking that deal. How about Tyler Lockett, 28 years old at the Seahawks? They did draft Eskridge there. And, of course, DK Metcalf's always moving into a bigger role. So Tyler Lockett, what do you think about him, Levi?
He might be one that I'd wait till in season 2, honestly. Like, he kind of had...
Want to do straight up just 112 for him right now?
Probably not, honestly. Like, I think, again, that he's kind of in that wide receiver 2-ish range. I mean, he's going as wide receiver 34 right now, so I think he has the potential to finish in that wide receiver 2 range, 2 to 3 fringe. And I just think that some of those receivers, if you pick the right one in the draft, have the potential to deliver that type of value. And again, if they don't pan out, you can always trade, lesser assets plus a future first or something like that to get a lock-it-in season if you need him. He's not as hard to obtain as some of these other players we're talking about, like a Hopkins.
This isn't a guy I'd be trading for. I don't think, even if I had this championship roster that I'm looking at pieces. Do you know how many times he went over 100 yards last year?
3.
One time.
His 30 or 40-point game or whatever it was.
He had another game that was exactly 100 yards in week 3. But week 7, he had 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. The 200 yards, he ended up with just over 1,000 yards in the season. So a fifth of his yards and 30% of his touchdowns came that one crazy week he had in week 7. So he'll win you that week for sure, but he just hasn't really been a consistent guy. And I guess if you're looking for just that week winner, maybe he's an option for you.
Yeah. 2018, he finished as wide receiver 18. In 2019, he finished as wide receiver 17. So he always finishes kind of in that range, but it's kind of like you mentioned, Trevor, he's more of a player you want to plug into a flex spot and just know that the weeks he hits, he's going to win you your week, and the other weeks he's not going to do much for you probably.
Yep. How about Adam Thielen, 30 years old, moving into that second option with Jefferson there in Minnesota? What would you be looking to? Would you be looking to trade for him? And if so, what would you be willing to give up?
If I were a contender, I certainly would. I'd probably give up that first round pick. I don't know how close that gets you to his value, but maybe he'll put a little something on top. He's going as wide receiver 22 in DLF startup ADP right now, so it's a little higher, honestly, than I expected, just given the way it seems like people feel about him. I think with Justin Jefferson there, they're going to have another really good year, and I think that there are enough targets to go around to make them both pretty fantasy viable. So I like Thielen, and I think you can get him relatively cheaply compared to some of the other similar caliber players that are going around him.
I think so too. It seems like he's getting talked about like he's 35 or something. He's 30 years old. He was pretty touchdown dependent last year. I think he was like third in touchdowns. He had like 15 last year. But he's pretty clearly going to be the second option there, at least 1A, 1B type of thing. And they trust him in the red zone. He should still keep getting red zone targets. I'd expect him not to just fall off on touchdowns. So I think you're pretty solid with Thielen for the next 2 years, and I would trade that 112 for him.
He definitely has locked-in touchdown regression coming. He finished with 14 touchdowns, which was number 3 among receivers, and 18.2% touchdown rate. So extremely.
Yeah, he's not going to get 14 again.
No, but I think he'll pretty easily be a starting caliber receiver for you, and he's not the difference maker, but he's one that if you need, somebody to round out your lineup or whatever the case may be, he's there.
Yeah, and he was hurt for a couple games last year, but he was getting a lot of targets most of the year, even with Jefferson there. He had an 8 target, 8, 10, 13, 11, 11, 9. So he was always getting the targets, even with Jefferson there, and I would expect that to continue for at least the next year or two.
Pretty similar to Robert Woods in some regards as far as both age and upside. And their line last year, they actually Thielen had 925 yards, which I think was very close to what Robert Woods had, just shy of 1,000. And then they really benefited from some good touchdown luck. So,
yep. All right. That was the last. Any other receivers you had on your head?
On my head. I don't think I have any receivers on my head.
That's how people say it. That's a normal phrase. You don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, pro's pro over here.
That's how the youths talk, and I'm young.
Yeah. Did your assistant over there feed you that one?
Yeah, he's hearing some fireworks go off, so he's really uncomfortable right now. He's down here in the basement with me, and he keeps trying to lay on my feet, and then he'll hear a firework go off, so then he's trying to get in my lap. But my dog over here is not happy with the 4th of July coming up.
I thought maybe you wanted to say hi to my friend Flipper.
Yeah, no, we're done talking to Flipper for the night.
Poor Flip.
So did you have any other receivers on your head?
None on my head at this time.
Okay. We'll get to tight end. Really the only tight end I had here was Travis Kelce, who is definitely top end tight end right now, but he is pushing 31. If you were in this position we've been talking about all night, was that somebody you would be targeting, Levi?
Yeah, I think you have to, just with how consistent he's been, how good that offense is. They rebuilt that offensive line. I'm expecting this Kansas City offense to return to form this year. Not that they were bad last year, but they weren't as incredible as they were in 2019. So I think that Travis Kelce is going to have another huge year. Yes, you're only getting a year, 2, 3 years of high-end production, but it's hard to find someone more dependable, especially at that position, than Travis Kelce.
Yeah. Would you trade your first and second this year, first and second next year for him?
Probably.
Yeah, I would think so too. He, like you said, with the position too, you're just not going to find that anywhere else. And the Chiefs have quietly don't have a lot of competition for targets anymore now that Watkins gone. Not that Watkins was putting up a lot of numbers with the Chiefs, but it's really Kelce and Hill and a drop off after that in Kansas City that's going to be getting a lot of targets.
Yep, didn't really add anybody of consequence. I think they drafted Cornell Powell, but I mean, nobody there who's really, scaring you about taking any work away from Kelce or Hill.
Mm-hmm. All right, so just to flip it a little bit, if you're in the rebuilding stage, you got one of the top picks this year. How are you looking? What are you doing in that rebuilding stage right now, Levi?
Well, if you haven't drafted yet, then the number one thing you should be doing is preparing for your rookie draft, putting in the research on these rookies. The other thing I think I'd be doing is probably listing the Fantasy Players Club, because we're going to be going over some of these division projections over the next couple of months, starting here when Brent gets back from vacation. And I think that'll give you a good idea of who we expect to have really big seasons, and maybe you can sell them, those veterans, for a little more early in the season or as the season gets closer, like we talked about, and who we also think maybe you should be looking to acquire, whether it's a sleeper, whether it's some upcoming players, as we talk a little Devi, some of that type of stuff going forward. So I think that's probably how I would target it. Like I mentioned, I wouldn't be looking to sell a lot of these players right now unless it really is a no-brainer type of deal, just because I think, those rookie picks are most valuable right now, and the veterans are the least valuable, and that's working against the rebuilding team.
Yep. So, I mean, of course, you're going to be looking at both, but would you be looking more at players or picks right now at this stage as being a rebuilding? Would you be trying to acquire those picks or the players, young players?
I think it depends. Like both. Can I say both?
Yeah, sure.
I think a lot of times rebuilding teams focus too much on just getting as many picks as possible, and instead maybe you should look to trade for maybe players who have a good chance of breaking out who haven't yet, or who maybe are younger but still developing. So like here's an example. I've talked about it before on the show.
Oh God, are you gonna talk about you took over a team and won it in like 2 years or whatever?
Yeah, but one of the reasons I was able to do that was I had the 101 the year Kyler Murray and Josh Jacobs were the top two coming out, like top competing for number one overall pick in drafts that year. And I traded that 101 and got Stephon Diggs plus a later pick. Like I traded down basically in the draft, and I turned that pick into AJ Brown. So like Stephon Diggs was still in Minnesota at that point and hadn't broken out. Like he was a good wide receiver too, with upside basically, but like it doesn't always have to be about getting a pick or a bunch of picks, a treasure trove of picks back. Like if you can get a good young player who has a lot of upside, like a Stephon Diggs, I think that that's just as important as just getting these picks, because sometimes there's a little less risk with those players and there's just as much upside. So I guess that's my only thing I would say is don't always focus on just the picks.
And you can tell me if my thinking's wrong, but if I'm sitting at 101, obviously my team has some holes to fill. I'm shopping that thing. I'm not putting it out on the trading block that give me your best option for 101, but I'm putting a lot of pressure on everybody, just poking around, seeing what people are valuing at and seeing what I can get for that 101.
Yeah, especially in a year like this where everybody feels you have such a sure thing, you can get a ton for that pick. And if you're rebuilding, it's very possible that, I mean, having that Trevor Lawrence and Superflex is great, but if you can get a package of really good players. If your team really is depleted, then that may go just as far or farther towards helping you be competitive again.
Especially if you have if you've got a one pretty good quarterback on your roster already, I'd really be seeing what that 1-on-1 can get you, where it's not, you're not in a wasteland of quarterback. Maybe you don't need to put Trevor Lawrence, and you can really get a big package.
Yeah, it certainly never hurts to see what people are willing to pay, especially around the time when that rookie fever is reaching its crescendo.
Yep. Well, that's all we had for Dynasty Strategy. All I had down here, Levi. Do you have anything else for the overall Dynasty Strategy today?
Nope, that was a good one. Thanks for coming up with it. Let's move on to round 2. For round 2 in our main event tonight, we want to recognize Brent, our good friend Brent. In addition to finding time to wreck the Tour de France, he also maybe had a little guilt and decided to donate $100 to the Team Jack Foundation, charity focused on fighting childhood brain cancer. Jack Hoffman was the kid who scored the touchdown in the spring game for Nebraska about 10 years ago now, and his family has started a foundation trying to fight childhood brain cancer so kids don't have to go through what he did. And unfortunately, Jack's doing great now, but unfortunately his dad did pass away from cancer earlier this year. So just a class move by Brent. But in exchange for his generosity, Brent thinks that we should let him out of this table bet, which I think, Trevin, at this point we've agreed to do that because Brent does, as he's mentioned on here, allegedly have some back problems and doesn't want to risk further injuring his back going through a table, which maybe he should have thought about when he made the bet, but I guess I'm willing to give him a chance to buy his way into a different punishment. What are your thoughts?
I said from the beginning of this bet that he was going to weasel his way out of it. He sent us a very long text on he doesn't want to hurt his back and he is wanting to donate some money to not just get out of it, but I knew he was getting out of it. From the second this bet was made, when I was just a guest on the show once in a while, I said week 1 of this bet being made, he's never going to go through a table. He's going to get out of this bet. And look at it now. He's not going through a table.
Yeah, what a weasel.
Weaseled right out. I told you.
So, since we're, I think, in agreement that we will take pity on old man Brent and let him out of this bet, based in part on his generosity for this charity that I think means a lot to all of us as Nebraska fans. However, he's not getting out of this altogether just based on his donation. We are still going to make Brent do something. So we came up with some ideas here, Trevin, for what Brent could do instead of going through the table in addition to his charitable donation. I'll let you read off the first one, which was your idea.
So my idea was that we need to get him doing something every day or a lot of something on Twitter with our Fantasy Players Club account. We can do, my idea was something about Bills facts, maybe every day until the NFL season. He has to tweet out a Bills fact and be tagging Bills players and Bills Mafia on just different Bills facts, and just something that's going to take some work for him and get him doing something every day to get out of this bet.
Yeah.
So that's my idea, is kind of a Bills fact that he's having to tweet every day. It's a commitment that he'd have to do.
That would be a lot of work. I don't know what the entertainment value of that one is for us and the listeners. It's certainly not nearly as entertaining as Brent going through the table. But
no, but it is something that the listeners can see that it's painful for him to. It'd be showing that he's doing something every day. Was my thought on it.
There's some accountability there, certainly.
Yep.
So here are the 3 ideas I came up with, Trevin, and I'm going to run through them, and you can tell me what you think after each one. First one, I think. Devin Singletary was the player Brent bet on to try to win this bet, and he fell short. So one potential punishment would be that Brent has to try to trade for Devin Singletary in every Dynasty league and acquire him in at least half of his Dynasty leagues, including the ones where he already has him. What do you think about that one?
I love it. I had thought of something similar to that too, but I don't know how. If anybody listens to the show that has him in that league, I don't know if he can get a fair price for him at that point, is my only concern.
Yeah. And I think that's why I said like half of them, because if somebody's going to try to do that to him, it's not fair to make him overpay significantly. But I think
Devin Singletary.
but he should have to try to make a decent offer
Yeah.
to get Singletary. So
I think so too.
That's one
How
option.
Yeah, I like it. Maybe he can just say, this is the offer I'm willing to give up, and we can say if it's fair, he can offer it. If the guy doesn't accept, it's not really Brent's responsibility. He tried. Something like that, too.
Sure. Okay. My second idea is that he has to draft Devin Singletary in the first round of at least three best ball drafts that he live streams on Twitter so that everybody can see that he actually followed through here.
I think more than 3. The guy does like 70 best ball leagues.
But he does have to live stream them, so.
Sure, yeah. I think that one would have to be a little more painful on the amount he is doing. He can write off 3. What's he pay to get in? $1?
I think it depends. Like, I'm sure if he had to draft Devin Singletary in the first round, he'd be doing the $1 ones for that.
I like it, though.
But then you also have to spend like 2 hours, or I guess it's not 2 hours, maybe an hour drafting your best ball team that you know has probably got 0 chance of winning because you took Devin Singletary in the first round.
I like it. It's got to be something a little painful for him. I do appreciate that he's doing the donation, but he was supposed to be going through a table on live Twitter, so it needs to be a little bit painful for him.
All right. I think this last one may be the most appealing to you and to the listeners then. I don't know how familiar you are with Bill's Mafia, Trevin, but there is this man named Ken Pinto Ron Johnson. Pinto Ron in quotation marks.
Is this ketchup guy?
So, yes, it is. Let me read to you. This is Pinto Ron's Wikipedia. He's a Bills superfan known for attending every single Bills home and away game and hosting a tailgate party from 1994 to 2020, even attending the 2015 Bills-Jaguars game in London. He's a software engineer by day. He's known for his red Ford Pinto and antics cooking food on his car hood and a variety of objects, such as a shovel, an army helmet, and furthermore, he holds a tradition of being doused in ketchup and mustard. Most notably, he served shots out of a bowling ball until he was forced to shut down by the NFL. He moved this tailgate party to private property next to the stadium where the NFL has no jurisdiction, and he was able to resume serving bowling ball shots. He's been featured in multiple NFL films as well as a made-for-TV movie. A streak of 423 games attended over 26 years ended in September 2020 as the games were played without spectators due to COVID, which I think that's baloney with Wikipedia. You can't say his streak ended just because of that.
He didn't end the streak. Yeah.
So Pinto Ron's nicknames, in addition to Pinto Ron, are the Human Hamburger, the Pied Piper of Partying, the King of Ketchup, and the Sultan of Shots. So some pretty sweet names. And they asked him about this, and he said, originally the idea back in 91 was I would hold my arm out and they would try to stream the ketchup in the air and bounce it off the burger and get the proper amount on the burger, but nothing on me. The guys who were running the shower realized that they got a little bit on my arm, and some would laugh and giggle. Then they got more, and then they got more. As the years went by, it turned into something totally different than what we had intended.
I'm watching a video. It's just like there's 5 guys standing on top of a car just spraying him in the face with ketchup. They're not even trying to get the hot dog. He's covered in ketchup.
Yeah, it's awesome. Absolutely awesome.
I love this guy.
Yeah, so I think I think this might be the winner, and we might have to have Brent do the Pinto Ron. We can get his 2 daughters and his wife there to help us spray ketchup and mustard on him, and maybe you and I come to Grand Island, spray some ketchup and mustard on Brent, and get some video for the listeners to enjoy as his punishment. What do you think?
Yes, I'm all in on the Pinto Ron. This is perfect. It's still a Bills tailgate thing. He's not going to hurt his back getting ketchup sprayed on his face, so his back's fine.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's a pretty easy winner then. I'm glad we came up with that one.
Yep. I can't believe this guy's head is just ketchup. His whole front of his body is just ketchup.
I think there should be one other caveat on this one. Before we start, we all have to do bowling ball shots. Well,
yep.
At least Brent and us.
Yep.
All right. We'll get Brent's take on that when he comes back.
Yep. Pinto Brent. We'll cook a hot dog on a car engine, and he's got to eat that after we spray him with ketchup.
Perfect. That is the perfect option. Oh man, let's move to our question of the week. And for our question of the week this week, I just went on the big road trip last week, 14 hours in a car with 2 kids and a wife. It was surprisingly not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But it got me thinking a good question of the week would be, what's the best road trip snack? Trevin, what's your go-to?
Did you do straight shot both ways?
We stopped in Madison overnight on the way up, so that was about 8 hours in the car. But on the way back, we did it all in one day.
Wow, that's impressive. That's tough to do just me and my wife, let alone having 2 small kids with us.
Yeah, it was a long day, but everybody just wanted to be home.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not a huge snack guy on road trips. I don't drink a lot of pop, but on the road trips, that's usually when I grab a Coke. Sunflower seeds, I always like to have on a long trip, but I kind of got away from those when other people would eat them and then they'd leave their sunflower seed spitters in my road trip car. So I don't do that near as much as I used to. I used to just be filling up cups and bottles with sunflower seeds. So if I'm driving somewhere on my own, I usually like to do that still. But I don't know. I like the munchies snacks where it's got kind of a trail mix type of stuff in it, where it's a mixture of pretzels, and I like to have a little mixture, I guess.
Trail mix is a good one. I'm not a huge fan of the munchies. I'd almost rather just have whatever type of those chips or Cheetos or whatever I enjoy most that's in there. I like Gardettos. I think that's my 101.
Oh, I should have. Yeah, I'm a big Gardettos guy too. That should have been my number one.
Yeah. Snickers is all right. Didn't have any of those on this trip. I don't like to drink a lot. Like you mentioned Coke. Like I've gotten them before, but I feel like I just end up having to stop more when I drink a lot of pop on a road trip because you have to go pee then. But
sure, and I don't drink it a lot. If it's a 10-hour trip, I'm drinking 1 Coke. So I don't know, something to sip on.
Underrated one that I threw out to you guys before as to your age-old question of whether or not it's a chip, but Shelly turned me onto these. It's the Fritos flavor twists and the honey barbecue one.
Oh yeah,
it's really good. So there's a sneaky one for you, listeners.
The Italian recipe Gardettos is my all-time favorite Gardettos.
Ooh, I like the standard, but the Italian one's all right too.
Yeah, they're kind of tough to find. Not every place has the Italian ones.
Yeah, you a beef jerky fan?
No, because I'm cheap. We've talked about that I'm cheap before.
Yeah.
And it's crazy expensive. It's just a little tiny bag of beef jerky that's mostly air. It's like $10.
Yeah. Let's try it out.
State. Yeah. My wife likes getting it. And so every time she wants it, I always do the same dumb jokes of, oh, we must have won the lottery. Oh, did you plant a money tree? How are you affording beef jerky?
Well, you got the dad jokes down already, so you're prepared for December.
Then another go-to is, oh, they must have gave you a loan at the cash register. How'd you afford that?
They have those now, apparently. If you buy something online, you can pay for it later. Have you seen that?
No, like Amazon or what? Any place?
I think a lot of online retailers have it now. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically like you can pay nothing for it now and just have a loan to pay for your stuff over time. Just at the checkout part.
Nice.
Wow.
I do see Amazon. I think most things you can buy on there, it's like you can select payment plans now instead of paying, even if it's like a $20 item.
Yeah, it's wild. All right, beer check.
Oh yeah.
What you got?
So I'm drinking. I don't know if I've had it on the show before or not. I tweeted about I'm a peach beer guy now, and Omega's with me. But I got a Peach Stand Rambler Blonde Ale from Odell Brewing. I think it's Colorado. Yeah,
I think
Fort Collins. I'm peach beer guy now. It's the 2021 Peach Beer Summer.
You gonna rate it?
Oh yeah, it's good. 8.8. I really like
it. Sam Adams Summer Ale. I've had this one before. It's good. I'll go 7.8.
Nice.
All right.
You going to participate in Peach Beer Summer?
No, I'm not a huge peach guy.
Not even the beer?
No.
I'm not just out here eating peaches, but I like peach beer.
Yeah, well, I'm just not a peach flavor fan. But Brent is just joining in and asked if we missed him. We do miss you, Brent, and you're going to want to listen to this episode because we came up with your punishment idea for, and I think you're going to love it. So instead, go through the table. We got something special for you when this episode comes out. So be on the lookout. Before we go, Trevin, speaking of your cheapness, this week I asked you to donate to a charity, and you, Brent says, "Oh crap!" But I asked you to donate to a charity so we could sponsor the Scott Fishbowl Potathon. And after complaining that your child wouldn't be able to afford any Christmas presents, you begrudgingly donated. So we are proud to once again sponsor the Scott Fishbowl Potathon, which starts at 9 a.m. Eastern on July 5th. Guests include industry giants such as Matthew Berry, J.J. Zacharyson, Elliot Christ, and Matt Harmon, and a lot more. And it also features a lot of the top upcoming personalities and analysts in the Dynasty space. So I know we have a lot of Dynasty fans who listen to the show. Definitely tune in to the Scott Fishbowl Potathon. Again, that's 9 Eastern on July 5th. Goes for 24 hours, so tune in anytime during that. We aren't sure, I guess, at this point yet which segment we'll be sponsoring, but we're just proud to be associated with it again, second year in a row, and we look forward to them raising a ton of money again this year for Fantasy Cares, which ends up going to the Toys for Tots and buying Christmas toys for kids all across the country. And Trevin, since you are now in the poorhouse after your donation, maybe your tot will get a toy this year.
I hope so. No, it's cool. I'm happy we're a part of it.
All right. Well, thanks for being part of the Fantasy Players Club, everybody. We will have a new episode for you next week that will live stream on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. We'll get Brent's reaction to his punishment. Until then, on behalf of Trevin, Chucky Cremosta, this is Levi, the Heartbreak Kid, Valentine, wishing you a great week.
See ya.
All right, Trevin, you had an after show idea.
Yeah. So I had this idea. It's definitely not something we have to do every week. Just I think if something comes up that might work for the show, and of course it's your comfort level with sharing your stories, but I thought it might be kind of interesting. Tell the listeners, tell me something one of your kids did, and Brent also, and just any situation you're in with your child and how you would handle it. And I think more leaning towards them learning things, or just any situation really, and seeing what I would do in this situation, and then you can say how you handled it if you want to, and how the result was.
I'm glad to see you are ready to get some mental reps in for being a dad before December gets here.
Yeah,
I came up with a few varied scenarios, so I'll go through them quick. I have four examples, and maybe Brent, if you have a good one, feel free to chime in the comments. But my first one was Owen just gets irrationally mad at a lot of things because he's 3 years old. But one of them is like if we're driving in the car and I reach over and hold Shelly's hand while we're driving, he gets mad and says, "No, and not your mommy," or something like that. Or like if I give her a hug, he gets mad and comes over and pushes me off of her and gives her a hug himself and says the same thing. So that's one of his things, I guess. He doesn't like me holding her hand or giving her a hug.
And is it like actual anger or is it playful?
Oh, no, he's like legitimately like, don't. He's not like crying, but he's like yelling, "Don't do that."
Huh. That's tough.
So what do you do?
If he's actually mad, it doesn't seem like a situation where you can do a lot of joking back, or you're just going to have a toddler that's got steam coming out of his ears at that point. If you're not taking him serious about his anger, I think. So in this case, I think it would be a situation you just kind of have to have talk that it's your mom. It's also, I love her too. And we can both hold her hands type of thing.
Yeah. I go, what if she wants me to hold her hand? He just goes, no. So a lot of times in the car, I'll just keep holding her hand and he'll eventually just stop. But in the house, sometimes I'll mess with him and do it on purpose just to get him riled up. But it's not like you hug for real long, so.
How long do your hugs last? Me and my wife do it just for hours sometimes.
That's called cuddling, I think.
No, standing up.
Here you go. One from Brent. This happened tonight. My daughter orders too much food at a restaurant, but barely eats it.
That would make me really angry.
What do you do?
I think you don't leave till she eats it.
Ooh, you don't even leave, huh?
Yep. That's
And
my
what if
only. I'd be really upset.
Isn't Brent's daughter like 13 or 14? You're just gonna sit there and make your 13-year-old daughter eat
Oh, that's
all
true.
her
I
food.
went to the age difference was different there. I don't know. There's not a lot of options there. You take it home with you and force her to eat it later. I don't really know what you could do. Just be really upset, I guess.
I think that's what I'd do is just take it home and say you gotta eat this for next meal or whatever. But here's a kind of a spin on that one. What if you went to the restaurant and your kid ordered like a $30 steak or something?
Well, I mean, you can just say no, can't you? You're the one paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
Yeah, I'd just say no. No, you're not getting that.
So you're gonna tell the waiter if they tell the waiter that's what they want. You're saying no. Pick something else.
Yeah.
Right in front of the waiter.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of the social embarrassment type stuff with that. Like I don't really care if the waiter thinks I'm cheap. Like what's that? I've never seen this person again. My 13-year-old isn't getting a $30 steak. Sorry if you think I'm cheap now, waiter. I'll give you a fat tip at the end, but I'm not giving my kid a $30 steak.
All right. I'll go back to a younger one that'll be more relevant to you sooner. So since day one, our younger son, Carson, has always just like been kind of an a-hole. And one of the biggest a-hole things he does. One of the biggest a-hole, he's gotten a little better, but one of the biggest a-hole things he does is he'll just take his pacifier out of his mouth and just drop it on the ground, or like I'd be rocking him at night, he'd just take it out and drop it on the ground. Then you hunt around in the dark and try to find this thing while he's just holding him the whole time. Or like most recently when we've gone on walks, we've been like walking around the block and he's in this little truck sitting there and he'll just take it out of his mouth, stick it outside the truck and drop it on the ground as we're walking.
Is it because he gets a reaction out of you or something?
I don't know. But when he's a newborn, he would just, spit it out or drop it or whatever. Like, I don't know why he did it back then. Huh. Now I don't know why he did. I guess he's just done with it and he just.
But then does he get upset that he doesn't have it after he does it?
Not really.
Oh.
But you can't really like fall asleep without it, so you gotta find it.
How expensive are pacifiers?
Not that bad.
See, that'd be real trouble here with this dog, because knowing this dog like I do, it'd be in his mouth immediately. He'd be eating that. So that'd be trouble. Have you tried the shirt clip? I know there's shirt clips for him.
Yeah, but you can't really have the strap on them when they're going to bed, because if it gets around their neck or whatever.
But you can have just a pacifier? That seems like, can they choke on that?
No, it's too big for them to swallow.
Well, I don't know. There's not a lot of, you can't really sit down and explain to them that you need your pacifier later tonight, so quit throwing them on the ground. They're a little young for that. That just seems like when you got to take in the shorts, I guess.
I think that's, you just got to tell them you're an asshole, and they don't know any.
You call them an asshole? How often do you call your toddler an asshole? Your newborn, your baby is a better word. Baby an asshole.
I don't do it much anymore, but when he was a newborn and he didn't know what I was saying and he'd do stuff like that, it's on what a-hole he was. All right. Worst trip I've ever had home from work with Owen. We picked him up this is when he's probably a year old or so. Picked him up from daycare. We're going home. We get probably halfway home. Shelly's with me because we're both in the office. And he just vomits in his seat, projectile vomits. Like halfway home on the busy highway, just. What we ended up doing was pulling over and she tried to like clean him up with some napkins we had in the car. But let's say hypothetically that you're by yourself and your kid's in the backseat, just threw up all over the place. Are you just trying to make it home and deal with the situation when you get there? Or are you pulling over on the side of this busy highway and trying to clean it up?
I'm just making it home. I've got a similar story to that. So we went on a. We were gonna go look at Christmas lights a couple years ago, and my brother-in-law. We were supposed to watch his dog. So yeah, I'm with Brent. So we're supposed to watch his dog, and we're gonna go look at
Hold
these
on.
Christmas lights. Go
Brent
ahead.
says roll down. For the listeners, Brent says roll down the windows and go home. So Trevin and Brent are on the same. That's what I would have done, but she was with me and she wanted to clean it up. So I had to pull over on the side of this busy highway, interstate. So
Yeah.
anyway, sorry. Your
I'm
story,
just
Trevin.
getting home. But anyway, so we're supposed to watch this dog, and it's a dog that can't hold its bladder very well. It's old, and we're going to go look at Christmas lights. So I was like, well, let's just not do that then because I don't want this dog in my pickup. And my wife's like, no, it'll be fine. Let's get him in the pickup. And it's about 45 minutes away for these Christmas lights. So we're driving there. We get about halfway, and I start hearing piss behind me. And I got a seat cover for my own dog. Both dogs are back there. Hear piss. I'm mad because I knew this was going to happen. My wife's saying, no, it's okay. It's a waterproof cover. I'm like, it's not that waterproof. So she's like, well, we're almost there. So let's get going. So we get to the lights. All this. Go
Why
ahead.
can't you put the dogs in the back of the pickup, like the bed of the pickup?
They'll jump out. We had to go down a highway to get to these lights that we were going to.
Okay.
And my own dog does great back there. He just sleeps most of the time in the pickup. But anyway, so we get there, and then all of a sudden, it's like a bucket of piss is getting dumped behind me. It's gallons of piss, it sounds like, getting pushed into my seat. Like a sloshing mess, and I'm steaming mad. So we look at these lights. Well, there's nothing I can do because I didn't have enough towels or anything to clean up anyway. So just drove the rest of the way home really angry and then cleaned it all out. So I think I'd do the same if I had a child back there that just all of a sudden vomits everywhere. Like, just get home. There's nothing I can do really now to fix this problem. I'd rather be home doing it.
Yeah. Bad situation. All right.
So that's how I do that one.
Last one I came up with. We'll go out on this one unless Brett has another one. Owen started doing this recently where he repeats everything I say a lot of the time. And it's always like late at night when he's supposed to be going to bed and does not want to go to bed. So like I'll tell him, Owen, you need to go lay down or you're going to go timeout. And he says, no, you go timeout. I was like, you need to listen. No, you need to listen. Like all that type of stuff.
And that's the kind of thing with kids that I'm going to struggle with. Because it is funny, but you can't just laugh and you're really frustrated because you want to go to bed yourself. You got to get these guys to bed so they're having better mornings the next day. But that's tough. And I don't know. I don't really know if there's a lot of options besides just shutting their door on them. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I've started taking him, putting him in timeout because that's the only way he'll stop and actually listen. And if you just shut the door, he just screams and wakes up his brother, so it doesn't really work.
But the timeout, he does respect that and quits repeating you?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to make him get upset in timeout, and then he'll actually understand he can't do that. So, but I'm like, it's been bad after we got back from vacation because he had a week with no structure and, just out of his routine and everything. So it's been incredibly frustrating. And sometimes it is funny, but yeah, I think that's about the only thing you can do, unless he's like the only kid, then maybe you have other options, but it's not good.
There we go.
When it takes 2 hours to put your kid to bed, it's not a lot of fun.
Oh.
So much to look forward to.
I don't understand the time. We're gonna have a kid episode here before December, I think. But just to lean on that a little bit, I don't understand your time. How do you have any time for fantasy football for doing this podcast? Because I know you put a lot of work into fantasy football. So
I don't know.
And you have a good job that is a lot of responsibility too. So it's not like you're just slacking off during the day or anything like that.
It's a lot harder with two kids than one, I can tell you that much. One's not easy, but
yeah. I watch my sports, I cook my supper, and I feel like I'm still barely have enough time to do this podcast. That's just me.
I know. I'm just very thankful with one of the silver linings of the past year has been we're both home all the time and able to help with all the kids stuff at night. So if you were If it was like when Owen was little and one of us was gone a lot, it'd be a lot harder. But all right, that's enough kid stuff. Lots of stuff for you to look forward to, and we'll have that father special dads episode coming up sometime.
Sounds good.
All right. See you, everybody.
Yep.